Good day and welcome to the TEFL Academy webinar. My name is Luan and I have been a tutor and teacher trainer with the TEFL Academy since 2000 and I can't remember. It would be great to see where you are. I'm in Cape Town, South Africa, a little chillier today. So it would be great to hear where you are. So please in the chat, put your name, tell us where you are today. It would be great to say hi. So as mentioned, I'm a tutor and teacher trainer for the TEFL Academy, also an English teacher, an examiner. I'm busy but never bored. And I look forward to sharing this webinar with you and also to be a part of your TEFL journey. Please bear in mind that today's webinar will only be about today's topic. So any questions that come in, any comments that you make, it would be great if you could keep those related to the topic today. And of course, I will handle all your questions later on. I will open up Q&A where you are more than welcome to type those questions in. I am going to suggest to you that you save your questions for Q&A because I may miss them if they come in a little bit earlier on. So please hold on to those questions. And when it's Q&A time, yes, of course, type them into the chat and I will get to as many of those as possible. Now I see all these names and places coming in, and it's always such an exciting thing for us as TEFL tutors and trainers to see that there are people from South Africa today, like me, but then there are also teachers joining us from Poland, teachers joining us from Jamaica, always wonderful to see. And then also we've got teachers from Alabama, USA, amazing. So please feel welcome and yeah, feel comfortable to ask those questions that you might have a little bit later on. Today's webinar is around a very specific topic. I think something that you might find very, very useful in your teaching career and in your teaching experience. So why not let's get straight to it and introduce the topic today. It's teaching business English. So, you know, when we do our TEFL, when we get our TEFL certificate, we tend to think that we're going to walk into a classroom and just teach a very specific kind of student. In my head, I had a young learner, lots of young learners sitting in a classroom just looking at me with these eager faces, posters and colors up all over the walls. But you know what? As great as that is, not every single classroom looks like that because business English, you've got an entirely different student. So let's have a look at exactly what we're going to be covering today. The webinar is packed, it's jam-packed with lots and lots of information to help you on your teaching business English journey. Right, so let's move to the second slide, where I will tell you a little bit about what we're going to be covering. We're going to be looking at business English. What is it? A definition of business English. We're also going to look at who wants to learn business English. And then on the other side of that, who can teach business English? And then also what it entails, a bit more detail, just to give you an idea of the kind of content you are bringing across from yourself to your students, and then also how to get started, tips and tricks and strategies to use to create that really, really effective work scheme. We're just continuing on as we look at what's coming up in today's webinar, the advantages and also challenges. I don't want to say disadvantages because for me, as a TEFL trainer, there are no disadvantages when it comes to teaching business English. But of course, yes, there are a few challenges that you need to get around. So we're going to be looking at that today. And then also we're going to be looking at some career opportunities for you to explore as a TEFL teacher, and then also where to find some good resources and authentic materials, and then also an introduction to the business English course that we offer at the TEFL Academy. This is absolutely not to steer you to sign up for that course, but to show you the value of that course in terms of today's webinar. All right, so I think it's time to get started and look at exactly what business English is. So business English forms part of English for Specific Purposes, ESP. In other words, it is specifically designed to meet the very specific needs of the learner. It was designed for professionals who need to communicate in English in the workplace, where general English courses focus more on practical and functional English, which can be used in sort of everyday settings. Well, business English looks more at the specific English style used in a business environment. And I think something so necessary for your students who are in business. And if you think about it, not just in those typical corporate settings, but for someone wanting to open up a business, for someone wanting to work at a company. So it's not only, you're not only thinking about a group of directors or executives sitting around your table, but actually people, everyday people who want to venture into a business environment and just need the English necessary to empower them in that context. So that is what business English encapsulates. And I think that a webinar on this is so necessary because it gives you direction and it helps you plan those lessons and think in terms of what the business English student wants. And speaking of which, the very next slide that we're going to show you is who wants to learn business English. So when we think about a typical business English student, they are generally those who want to conduct or would like to conduct business English or speak English in English speaking companies or companies who use English as a shared language with companies outside the Anglosphere. So if you think about it, you've got, yes, English speaking companies, then you have companies who are not typically English speaking, but they need to communicate with companies who are, or with people who are English speaking at other companies. So basically, just for that common thread of English running through the business world, that is the student you're looking at. So many job seekers are also interested in learning business English. In general, the focus is much less on grammar, but more on specific skills, language, and vocabulary. So I think maybe you're starting to visualize what a typical student looks like. So business English is not necessarily, as I mentioned earlier, for business people per se, or for people conducting business with English speaking countries. Business English is also used as a lingua franca, which is a common language between countries where different languages are spoken, for example, France and China. This is because English has already established itself as the language of international business and technology. So honing business English skills is also popular with students and job seekers around the world. So I think what you're seeing by me bringing these points one by one to you is that yes, you're getting a better idea of what the business English student looks like, but you're also getting an idea that your business English is not aimed at just one particular kind of student, but your pool is starting to grow, which is a fantastic thing and great news for TEFL teachers looking to teach business English. And then if you think about aspects like globalization and technology, these are also two reasons the demand for business English is on the rise. So business English has become increasingly international, and technology has allowed us to communicate at even faster speeds. So many typically international fields have a particularly high need for specialized business English training, and these include finance, law, engineering, medicine, hospitality, aviation, and IT. And in each case, as a business English trainer, that's you, it's important that you keep in mind the specific specialized English language needs of your students in terms of skills, the language, vocabulary that they require. So remember, for business English, this is personalized, it's needs based. It's a needs based approach to teaching. And as you can see, the focus on grammar becomes smaller and smaller, but that focus on functional language within the business environment, well, that is the key here and the core of business English. So if you're imagining businessmen and women sitting in suits around a boardroom table, you're not totally wrong. But that's not the only scenario when it comes to teaching business English. So, business English can be necessary for employees at various levels of a business, from salespeople. So, picture this in your mind. I think it makes the content of this webinar a lot more relatable if you actually try to visualize this. So, picture it. Um, you've got salespeople, you've got managers, you have call center agents to CEOs. So students who take business English lessons might do so in company, during office hours, or privately after hours. Companies can sponsor their employees to take a sabbatical or just some time off specifically to learn business English. University students who are doing a business degree can take extra one-on-one lessons with tutors to help them through their studies. And this can be done at the university or at a private language school. So as you can see, lots and lots of threads and options opening up for you as a business English teacher. And then also think business English students of the TEFL Academy tutors have included a CFO of a French bank who studied one-on-one English lessons in South Africa for 4 weeks, call center agents living and working in the UK, Angolan engineers sent to a company in South Africa again for a year to have group lessons. So they lived and worked in South Africa, traveled back and forth, but had lessons with one or two teachers at a language center. Spanish commerce students taking extra lessons at their university while studying. A Polish security guard working in the UK who needed to learn how to write work reports. I think that's just taken you on a whole little journey in terms of what the business English student looks like. So as you can see, wide range of students, lots of opportunity for business English teachers. And I think that's what makes this so excellent for you joining this webinar and even exploring this as an option. Right, so we've looked at who wants to learn business English, and thankfully a lot of people do. But let's also have a look at who can teach business English. Right, so the good news is that's you, TEFL teachers. As you probably know by now, there are many different situations you can find yourself in if you are a TEFL teacher. You might choose to teach English as a foreign language to a specific group like kindergarten or teens or adults, or your school might ask you to do a specific age group or a specific class on top of your usual classes. For example, English for academic purposes or exam classes like your Cambridge courses, your FCE, your CAE. And while most of these classes are doable with a bit of research and preparation, there is one class that can strike fear into the hearts of even the most experienced EFL teacher, and that's business English. A very common question we get asked is, can I teach business English if I have no business experience, if I don't have a business degree, if I don't have some kind of business qualification? And the answer is yes. Yes, you can. So if you think about it, we often teach topics within English that we have no knowledge about. We teach about the environment. We teach about global warming. We teach about technology and medicine. I once had to teach aviation English to a group of aspiring pilots. I know nothing about aviation except for having been on an airplane to fly somewhere. But we don't question our ability to do that. So business English, though, seems to be so foreign and unknown that many teachers don't believe that they can teach it, even though they can. So now that you know, as a TEFL qualified teacher, you can teach business English, let's have a deeper look at what business English entails. Right, so a whole list, right? There's a lot you can cover in a business English course. So earlier we looked at the definition of business English. Now let's take a look at what it involves, right? So your business English class will depend entirely on your students. You may be teaching a team of accountants from Hong Kong, a CFO from France, the HR department of a German company. Each class has their own needs, and they might not be exactly what you think. So, the usual topics, let's explore these a little bit. Your usual topics are giving presentations, writing emails to customers, chatting with foreign colleagues, talking to customers on the telephone, writing emails to international colleagues, effectively participating at an international conference, giving a presentation to potential customers, and then also engaging in small talk. But the list doesn't quite end there. It also extends to having a job interview at an English company. Right now, in my teaching, I am currently working with a student who is preparing for job interviews. So, our business English lessons are all focused on the job interview, how to look for the ideal job, what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say. That's what we include in our lessons. And then also conducting interviews. If they are on the other side of the desk, how do they conduct an interview? Negotiating a contract, understanding a contract, making suggestions for a project, debating topics at a meeting, how to participate in meetings, and then also dealing politely with a customer complaint. So, as you can see, the list is quite extensive. But again, that's good news for you because there is a wide range of knowledge required, yes, but I feel that as TEFL teachers, we already have the bulk of that just by being exposed to these things on a daily basis and also speaking fluent English. So I think you've already got what it takes, and that the wide range of topics really shouldn't scare you, but actually encourage you. Right. So, where do we start, right? I think this is the most important jumping off point, and that is to do a needs analysis. For me, this is the foundation of my work scheme, of my course. I do this with business English, I do this with general English sometimes, and I certainly do this with specific purposes English. So, what do we do here? We find out exactly what students really want to achieve and when they would typically use English. Now, remember, when I refer to language, what I mean is English, vocabulary, and grammar. So, more and more emphasis is getting placed on the student centered classroom, and for good reason. The students and their needs should really be the focus of the classroom, and this should be reflected in the content, the style of the lessons, and also the activities. In other words, it's really important to find out what your students need in order to plan appropriate and relevant lessons specifically for them. Creating a needs analysis, think about it as the first step to finding out exactly what they need. A needs analysis is a useful tool for finding out a whole range of information, which will help you make informed decisions related to your lessons, your upcoming lessons, and the structure of your class. A needs analysis can be carried out simply through a questionnaire using written prompts for exercise or a class discussion. And then, however it's done, it needs to contain certain information. And these questions that I'm going to go through right now should form the basis of any needs analysis. So when it comes to business students, you need to be able to find out what they would use the English for. Example, do you ever talk on the telephone in English? What do you find challenging about learning and speaking English? So remember, these are some questions that you can include in your needs analysis. Do you speak English more often with native or non-native speakers? Do you often use English at work or in your leisure time? And then questions like what, who, which. And this will tell you a little bit about the student's current, past, and future use of English skills. For example, do you know do you know English to use in meetings or at conferences? Which category matches each question? Do you speak English to other colleagues? Have you studied English in the past? Who do you usually speak to? Where do you usually speak English? What kind of questions do you usually ask? So these are some questions that you can include in your needs analysis. And I think that it'll give you direction and a starting off point as a teacher when it comes to taking that first step and drawing up that work scheme, right? And also, another important thing to remember is to create a very friendly atmosphere in the classroom. So remember, we're looking at how to get started. That first section, all about the needs analysis. Now it's about the environment that you create. So yes, it's a business course, but your presentation, yes, it needs to be professional and businesslike, but also keep it friendly. Keep your demeanor approachable. Inject a little bit of humor into the classroom, right? Be conscientious of how you behave and what you wear. Um, Business English students need motivation, they need encouragement. A group of managers, for example, returning from a conference, will need a trainer with high energy levels. And as mentioned earlier, a little bit of humor. Something that's very important to me as a trainer is to increase student talking time. That means purely to create situations, to create tasks that give your students the platform to speak and not you. You know English, you speak it beautifully. This is their moment to practice. So make sure that the environment is communicative, it's interactive, there is speaking time included as much as possible in every lesson and at regular intervals during the lesson. And then another point is to choose your materials wisely. Authentic materials are vital in the business English class. They create authentic situations, and the content of your lesson becomes really relatable. However, your biggest resource, as mentioned earlier, is your students. Allow them to bring in their own materials. This could be leaflets, emails that they have written, PowerPoint presentations, or reports. You could also use their own materials to create worksheets. Do, however, remember that because students are constantly missing the lessons, business comes first. Asking them to bring in resources and then basing your entire lesson on this may backfire if some of them do not arrive. It could change the dynamics of your lesson, and you must be prepared for this. Also, be flexible and try to anticipate problems. As teachers, we do this on a daily basis, and the business English class is no different. Business people can have high expectations. They might ask for classes before they start work, they might ask for classes during their lunchtime, like some of mine do, or at the end of a working day. This means that you could end up working long hours, perhaps starting first thing in the morning and finishing very late in the evening. In addition, as mentioned a little earlier, students may cancel at the last minute due to unforeseen problems. Perhaps an important call has come up or an urgent meeting. So teachers need to accept that business comes first. To reduce the stress, it can be a good idea to negotiate a cancellation policy with the company in advance. For example, they've got to inform you 24 to 48 hours if they need to cancel. A further issue may be the numbers of people attending class. So it's not unusual to prepare for a group of 6 to 8 people and then only have 1 or 2 people arrive. This happens on a daily basis. So try to create activities that will work on a one-to-one basis or for a tiny group. And in the event of everybody pitching up, well, lucky you. All right, so let's have a look at a few tips for lesson planning. So business English students, this is the thing. With novice ESL teachers, they should not dismiss the possibility of teaching an English for specific purposes class. You could be required to cover for an absent or a sick colleague. And if you've come into ESL teaching from a business background, you could be teaching ESP sooner than you think. We should also dispel the myth that says you have to teach business studies when you teach business English. This is not the case. All you will be required to teach is English for special purposes or for specific purposes. You should also prepare your ESP lesson plans essentially in the same way as you would prepare the general ESL lesson plan. But you should take the following points into consideration. So your ESP business students should already, and this is something very important to note, should already have a satisfactory command of English. They should not be starting at beginner level with you in a business English class. Their primary objective will be to learn how to express themselves in English-speaking business environments such as banking, insurance, finance, and accountancy. You should not attempt to prepare lesson plans based on run-of-the-mill grammar and vocabulary. You'll have to base it on those aspects of English that have a direct relevance and practical application for specific business environments. Example, accountancy, as mentioned earlier. If you're having serious difficulty in designing your lesson plans, you should think about talking to an ESP content specialist or someone to assist you, or speak to other teachers who have taught business English before. Also, make sure that you research the particular area of business for which you will be teaching English. Look online for some introductory texts, or buy a few secondhand books to assist you in expressing yourself a little bit better. And you'll feel a lot more confident if you've got this knowledge. Your lesson plan should also take into account the characteristics of adult students. For example, incorporate the students' lives and experiences into your lesson plan. Make sure that the work is relevant and has specific and immediate applicable goals. Adults are highly motivated, so within reason, your lesson plans should include more challenging work. Always have a few activities in your back pocket that really challenge and push your students a little bit. Your weekly lesson plans should include practice in the use of English in the following topics: business, correspondence, negotiations, specialized vocabulary, listening, especially telephone and video conferencing, and small talk. These are topics that are an integral part of every business environment. So that's a lot to take in, and thank goodness you can rewatch this webinar as many times as you need to. All right, so now let's look at some of the advantages of teaching business English. So one of the advantages about this scenario is that it gives flexibility to teachers because lessons can take place in many different formats. For example, a teacher can have one-to-one classes, a company group where the teacher gives lessons at the company during working hours or after work, and in school groups too. So as you can see, lots and lots of different scenarios. So there's a bit of flexibility here. It gives the teacher variety also, and nothing is sort of standard classroom. You have that flexibility. Another advantage is that you as a teacher can learn a lot from your students about the business world and how it works. So think about it. You're learning from one student and you've got all this knowledge now to take into another lesson. Also, skills development. You upskill yourself. Your skills, your abilities as a teacher can be developed, seeing as your students might be required to perform tasks like giving presentations or using particular online applications. I know I've learned a lot in my business classes. Language skills development. For you, your language knowledge can grow dramatically because you're required to function in a professional context. And one last point to mention is that the teacher does not have to deal with discipline issues that often. Isn't that good news? Teachers are always on the lookout for behavioral issues that they need to address in the classroom. But your business students are relatively motivated and professional. It's also worth adding that your creativity might be developed when you need to design materials specifically for your students. Now, as mentioned earlier, while there are advantages, there are also not disadvantages, but challenges that you need to get around. Because for me, as mentioned earlier, no disadvantages here. You may have to teach in the evening after your students have had a long day at work. They're tired, they've had enough, and that takes a little bit of energy and creativity from you to bring those energy levels where they should be. Secondly, attendance, as mentioned earlier, could be problematic sometimes, as your students may have conferences, business trips, or be pulled out of a lesson at any given point. These things happen. The next point is that if you are teaching in groups, there are sometimes mixed levels, and this can be an issue. Students can be mixed in terms of their language abilities, but also in terms of their age. In such cases, the teacher will have to balance things by challenging the stronger ones so that they don't end up being bored, but at the same time, making sure your weaker students do not lose focus or do not lose the essence of the lesson. And finally, with group classes, it can be problematic when you have managers and non managerial staff in the same group. This can influence your dynamic of the group negatively, perhaps. As the teacher, you will have to keep your eye on this and make sure that you are proactive. Also, students that are in non managerial positions might not be as forthcoming. See that you set up speaking tasks that really bring the communication out of your students. All right. The next thing we're going to look at is career opportunities, right? So think about it. With 1.5 billion people wanting to learn English right now, the career opportunities are endless. Once you have completed your TEFL course and perhaps the Teaching Business English course, you'll be qualified to teach business English internationally. So in a range of educational settings, like online, corporate institutions, and private one-to-one tuition, you've got a lot of options at your fingertips. So when it comes to finding employment, see if you can find clients online, see if you can find a school that teaches business English or that employs teachers who teach business English, because in that case, you wouldn't have to find your own clients, they get sent to you. Corporate institutions, I have a friend who works in another country at an oil company, and she goes to this company at lunchtime every day and teaches English. So those options are there for you too. I prefer the one-to-one setting, but that might not be for you. So I think it's not only to see what's out there, but what you would absolutely feel comfortable doing. Right, so let's look at where to find resources. So first of all, you do not need, I'm going to say this again, you do not need to know terminology relating to business to teach business English. Well, you do, but you can learn that on the job during your preparation time. You also do not need to know exactly how a particular business works. Your business English learners will be so varied that there is no way one TEFL teacher can know everything there is to know about all aspects of business English. So get that thought out of your head. I think it creates so much anxiety that is not needed. You do not need to know everything. Outside of our Teaching Business English course, In Company is the most popular course book for teaching business English, and the British Council and One Stop English, they offer great online resources for business English classes. Once you have the right resources, you can make sure that you are prepared adequately enough to make a success of your lessons. As mentioned earlier, authentic materials are necessary in the business English class. Now, just a reminder about what authentic material is. Authentic material is articles, listening clips, talks, emails, that sort of thing that was not created for an English lesson. Authentic material will not be found in a course book. Authentic material will not be found on an English learning site. Authentic material will not be found in an English learning resource. Authentic material is what you and I pick up to read outside the classroom. Articles, radio reports, a company's annual report, a TED talk, the student's own email, Google Pie charts, YouTube videos. This is what authentic materials entail, not materials that you would source from an English learning site. So as you can see, lots of options out there, and your students particularly enjoy the satisfaction, that feeling of having read something they found online or something that you've brought in, and they've been able to understand it, knowing that it was not specifically written and graded for them, but just for the ordinary person out there. Wonderful feeling, and really, really fantastic to work with as a teacher. All right, so we looked at authentic materials, and now very briefly, I am going to tell you a little bit about the TEFL Academy's Teaching Business English course. So of course, this is not course promotion because lots of you are already doing our courses. This is something additional that you can look at, whether it's a top-up course or whether it's an extension of your existing course. Please look into it. Because if you're watching this webinar, chances are you've already either enrolled on our Teaching Business English course, or you have interest in business English. So if you've not yet done so, let me tell you a little bit about it. The online course consists of 3 mandatory units. Each unit is test assessed online, and there is an end of course assignment. But the assignment is only for you if you take the course separately from our main TEFL course. If you have done it in conjunction with your main TEFL course, then of course you will not need to do the assignment. So if you're unsure of where you stand here, send us a message and we'll clarify that for you happily. So the 3 units are as follows. First, it's an overview of teaching business English. Secondly, techniques and activities for teaching business skills, and then also the all-important intercultural awareness, teaching receptive and productive skills. So I think the backbone of a business English course we've got nailed in our business English teaching business English course, sorry. So the course is designed to train teachers and aspiring teachers how to teach business English. So we're not teaching you business English, we're teaching you how to teach business English. Right, and in our increasingly globalized world, English plays a very important role. It is by far the most dominant language of business, and fluency is essential for anyone seeking to join this global workforce. International companies also often use English as a shared language, as we said, between companies that don't speak English. So I think that when it comes to business English, there is just so much out there to explore as a teacher before you present your content to your class. So in our business English course, as mentioned earlier, we explore and define business English, how it's used, the purpose behind it. The activities in our course are also designed to give you hands-on knowledge about the needs and expectations of your future business English students and how best to address them. How will it work? Well, you'll work your way through the online learning course, and then you'll complete the interactive activities as they are presented to you on screen. So all very user-friendly, very easy to negotiate. And if you have any problems, of course, you can contact us at Tutor Support and we'll help you. So some instructions are given for each activity, but how these function, it's usually quite self-explanatory. And then as mentioned before, you'll write a test at the end of each unit. And if you've done the Teaching Business English course separately from our main TEFL course, yes, you'll need to complete the assignment. If, however, your course is accessed through your main TEFL course, then you'll merely need to complete the unit tests. I've done these myself, and they're enjoyable and a great way to revise what you've learned. So when it comes to business English, I absolutely feel that it is something every teacher should explore. I mean, if it's a skill that you can give yourself, doesn't cost anything extra, but gives you as a teacher something else to add to your repertoire, then I say absolutely go for it. Teachers need to develop all the time, right? So my personal tips include the following. Yes, the in-class needs analysis is important. However, do your homework. your homework before students arrive. Get to know a bit about the group, research their culture. Go with the flow, but keep your eye on the target. Business groups in a classroom setting often like to jest and have a bit of fun. And this can be great for team building and rapport, but always try to bring their focus back to the lesson, particularly if it's based on something they have identified as a need in their needs analysis. Go over the aims at the start of each lesson. For example, in this lesson we will, and also after, in this lesson we will do this, in this lesson we'll do that. And this will help them see that despite the chit chat, some good work was done and the aims were met by the end of the lesson. And this is important to have boundaries. If you do not feel comfortable with accepting social invitations, or if the institution you work for does not allow this, then politely decline and wish them a great evening or afternoon, and then show some interest and ask them about it the next day. If they went to a restaurant, ask them, was the food good? If they went to a show, did you enjoy the atmosphere? So absolutely engage with your learners as far as you can. I've had amazing experiences in my business English classes. I've enjoyed every minute of it. The students are challenging, but so are the lessons. And I think that this just gives an amazing exchange between teacher and student. And I think that if it's something that you're thinking of, I need to remind you, business is not boring. There is something new to learn every day as a teacher, and your students will walk away feeling enriched because of the English they've acquired through you. And they feel valued because of your preparation and your effort. Remember, with the business English course, it's 90% you. You are preparing their work scheme, you're preparing all their lessons. This is not from a curriculum. So they feel valued because they know every bit of work that has gone into the lessons is there because of them. So I really, really hope that this webinar has helped you and given you the motivation to teach business English with confidence. If you're thinking about doing our Teaching Business English course, do not hesitate for even a second. Enroll immediately. The enrollment is immediate and you can get cracking straight away. If you're already doing our course, enjoy. And please remember to reach out if anything is unclear. Send us a ticket and we'll be more than happy to assist you. All right, also a reminder, because I actually saw this question coming in, and we're going to be heading into Q&A in a minute. So I urge you to immediately start typing your questions related to business English, and I will help you with those as soon as possible. But before we get to Q&A, a reminder that all our previous webinars are available on the TEFL Academy YouTube channel. And of course, if you have any other questions, maybe not related to today's webinar, or even just questions that I can't get to because of time constraints, then please send us a ticket to tutor support. Also remember that this webinar, today's webinar, will be available on our channel in a few days' time. Maybe Monday, maybe Tuesday, but it will be there eventually, which means you can watch it over and over and over and take as many notes as you need to. And also explore, as mentioned, the other webinars that have been done prior to this one. All right, so that's the end of me talking to you, or the end of me presenting to you. But of course, now is your opportunity, and please take advantage of this to type your questions in the chat, and I'll get to as many of those as I possibly can. All right. So it's Q&A time, and I think that already some questions have come in. All right, so Kay has asked, I'm not seeing this as part of my course. Can you clarify where it's found? So Kay, as mentioned, when it comes to business English, we don't have a particular unit within the main TEFL course dedicated to business English because any TEFL teacher can teach business English. However, also as mentioned, and if you rewatch this, you'll probably pick that up, is that we also have a short course of business English that you can absolutely do. It's a 30-hour course. You can do it adjacent to your main TEFL course, or you can do it at a later stage. And it covers everything that we've spoken about today. All right. You're very welcome. Okay, so Tom has asked a question. What did you mean by have boundaries in the last slide? I did elaborate a little bit, but you might have missed that. Adult students tend to extend invitations to adult teachers, like, teacher, after this class we're going for a coffee, teacher, after this class we're going to have dinner, or on Saturday, teacher, this is what we're doing. And they might extend that invitation to you. If you feel comfortable accepting, or if you work for a school where this is okay, by all means go. If, however, you do not feel comfortable, then just politely decline and ask them questions about it the next lesson. Was it good? Did you enjoy it? What did you enjoy about it? Please show some interest. So, Tom, that's what I refer to when it comes to boundaries. As a teacher, as an adult teacher with adult students, you've got to accept or reject invitations that you feel comfortable with. I hope that clarifies it. Please let me know. All right. Any other questions? Now is the time to ask. I see lots of comments and thanks coming in. I do so appreciate that. And I'm so happy to see all of you here. But please, yes, also ask questions that you might have so that we can absolutely get to those live in this webinar right now. I'm actually scrolling through just to make sure that I haven't missed anything. And a hello to all of you who came in a little bit later on. All right, we have a question from Elena. Elena is asking how to keep balance between tailoring the business course for students' needs and sticking to the CEFR. It is quite a challenge when a company sends low-level students to the business courses. I 100% agree with you, and I've been there. Elena, when it comes to business English, as I mentioned earlier, the student should ideally already have a strong grasp of the English language. So sometimes you're working with learners across two levels, maybe B1 students and B2 students. Sometimes you're working with B2 and C1 students. So that one shift in level is sometimes easier to negotiate because, as mentioned, you can have some standard activities and also some more challenging activities. Also remember, Elena, that you're not creating lessons based on grammar or specific or vocabulary out there. You're basing it on business material. So your students, when you do your needs analysis, you already know what sort of content they need. The level, however, as you've mentioned, if they send very low level students, all you can do, you are not there to catch them up and to get them to a certain level. You're just going to be teaching them the business English content and eliciting and explaining these concepts in a nice graded language. There isn't much more you can do. I think as teachers, when we advertise our skills for business English, I know I do it. I make it very clear that I cannot take students below a certain level. And also, I do also stress that if I've got mixed students, it cannot be crossing more than one of the CEFR levels. As mentioned earlier, B1s and B2s maybe, or B2s and C1s. You cannot possibly have a lesson where you've got B1s and C2s in a class. That is going to be rather challenging. And then I would say, rather propose to the company that we split those and we have two separate lessons, because that is going to be a challenge. So, Elena, and to all of you wondering, yes, it's a very good and valid question, is that sometimes companies do send very low level learners. I would immediately have a talk with them saying, look, this is the syllabus, this is business English. I need to be able to explain these concepts to students. So maybe some work in a general English class before they come to your business class, or yeah, just stick to your syllabus and try and grade your language when explaining those new concepts to them. I know it's hard. All right. But thank you for your question. Okay, I've also got a question from Larisha. Larisha, I'm going to display this on the screen. Larisha has asked, I have internal sales experience for an engineering company. Would it work to approach private sector businesses to teach telephonic sourcing and procurement? Absolutely, I would. I think that, Larisha, you've also got to look at your various skills within that one message. You've got sales experience and you've got that engineering experience. So I would say that you can even adapt lessons and split them. Sales, a course just for sales. And then, yes, have one or two lessons where the vocabulary is around engineering. But there are many, many options here for you. I'm almost excited for you and your course and your work scheme. But yes, you can absolutely contact private sector companies to teach them these skills, and also just advertise yourself on LinkedIn and all those platforms, and really push that niche, that very specific niche there, sales experience, engineering students. I think that's something you should really look into, pushing just that niche and really narrowing down your work scheme. Immediately when you do that, you pull in a very specific client, and it's easier for you to create your lessons and your work schemes too. All right. So I'm waiting and I'm watching, and if there are not any other questions, we can wrap this up a little bit earlier than expected, but that's fine too, because if you do remember any questions a little bit later on, or you think of something that you really wanted to ask or wanted to say, as mentioned, you can absolutely send us a message to tutor support, and of course we'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Also, another reminder that this particular webinar will be available in a few days' time, and also on our YouTube channel, that's the TEFL Academy's YouTube channel, you'll find all our past webinars, and you can scroll through, you can watch them, you can rewatch them, you can take notes, and you can gather lots and lots of information. We've also got webinars on all our assignments, and those are particularly useful too. All right, so if there are no other questions, thank you so much for joining us today at the webinar of the TEFL Academy Business English. I do so look forward to seeing you at the next one. And remember, same time, same place, unless we say different, you'll be more than welcome, and we'll be more than happy to have you with us. So once again, thank you for attending. But something important that you've got to do for us before you go is to complete our survey. We're always open to your feedback, and we really want these webinars to work for you. So please, I've put the link in your chat right now. Save this link and do the survey when you can. We appreciate your feedback. All right, so enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And as mentioned, I'll see you next time. Bye.